In 1954, a Baptist church in rural Georgia held a homecoming dinner that fed 300 people and not a single receipt. Every dish came from a home kitchen, and every recipe lived only in a woman's head or the margins of a spiral-bound church cookbook. Today, most of that food is gone. Number 14 was invented in a corporate test kitchen in 1955 and conquered every church basement within a year. Number 7 had congregations arguing over whose grandmother made it best. And number 1 was the crown of every picnic table. Hit that subscribe button, because some of these you will want to make this Sunday. Let us count down the 25 forgotten church picnic foods. Number 25, perfection, salad. Before anyone thought a salad had to be green, there was perfection salad, and it wobbled. Your grandmother dissolved a packet of lemon jello in hot water, let it cool to syrup, then folded in shredded cabbage, chopped celery, diced pimento, and a splash of vinegar before pouring the whole thing into a ring mold to set overnight in the icebox. The result was tart, crunchy, and cold, a savory jelly that shimmered on the buffet like something from a magazine. A box of gelatin cost about 7 cents in 1952, and the vegetables came from the garden. It won a national recipe contest back in 1905 and never left the church table for 50 years. Unmolded onto a bed of lettuce, it caught the sunlight through the fellowship hall windows and made the woman who brought it look like she had money and taste. Nobody makes it now. We decided salad meant leaves and threw the mold in a yard sale box. Number 24, cucumber and onion in vinegar. This was the dish that cost almost nothing and disappeared in the first 10 minutes. Thin sliced cucumbers and paper-thin onion rings, salted to draw out the water, then covered in a simple brine of vinegar, sugar, and a little water, left to sit until the flavors married. By the time the covered dish supper started, those cucumbers had turned cool and puckery and bright, cutting straight through all the fried chicken and gravy on the table. A cucumber from the church garden cost nothing. An onion, a nickel. Nobody wrote it down because everybody already knew it, which is exactly why it vanished. It traveled well in a mason jar with the lid screwed tight. It never spoiled in the July heat, and it got better the longer it sat. Old-timers still remember reaching into the jar with a fork for the last few slices, then tipping it back to drink the sweet, sour brine when the deacon's wife was not looking. Number 23, pickled beets and eggs. Somewhere on every picnic table sat a bowl of eggs, stained a deep, unnatural purple, and children either loved them or ran. Hard-boiled eggs were dropped into the leftover juice from a jar of pickled beets, sugar and vinegar added, and the whole thing left in the icebox for 2 or 3 days until the whites turned magenta straight through to the yolk. The taste was sweet, sharp, earthy from the beets, and unlike anything else on the table. A dozen eggs cost about 60 cents in 1953, and a jar of home canned beets came free from the cellar. Churchwomen brought them because they lasted, because they used up the beets that came in by the bushel every August, and because a bowl of purple eggs got attention. Sliced open, they showed a perfect ring of pink around a golden center. Today, you find them at a handful of Pennsylvania Dutch diners and almost nowhere else. Number 22, pimento cheese sandwiches. The pâté of the South, spread thick on soft white bread and cut into neat triangles with the crusts left on. Sharp cheddar grated by hand, mixed with mayonnaise. Chopped pimentos from a little jar. A grind of black pepper. Sometimes a dash of hot sauce for the bold. That was it. Your grandmother made a bowl the size of a mixing basin because pimento cheese sandwiches vanished faster than anything on the table. A block of cheese ran about 45 cents a pound in the mid-50s. A jar of pimentos a dime. The mixture was creamy and tangy and a little bit spicy, and it held up in the heat far better than egg salad. which is why it went to every outdoor dinner on the grounds. Church ladies stacked the triangles on a cut glass plate under a damp tea towel to keep them from drying out. Men ate 6 standing up. We buy it in plastic tubs now and wonder why it tastes like nothing. Number 21. Tomato aspic. Here is where the modern American recoils, but the 1950s congregation reached for seconds. Tomato aspic was tomato juice set firm with gelatin, seasoned with Worcestershire, lemon, a little onion, and a shake of hot sauce, then chilled in a mold until it held a knife. It came out a glossy, quivering red, sometimes with chopped celery or shrimp or hard-boiled egg suspended inside like flies in amber. Served on a lettuce leaf with a dollop of mayonnaise on top, it was considered the height of sophistication at a summer luncheon. A can of tomato juice cost about 15 cents, gelatin a few cents more. The flavor was savory, cold, and bracing, almost like a soup you ate with a fork. Every women's circle had one member famous for her aspic, and losing her recipe when she passed felt like losing a small piece of the church itself. Try to order it today, and the waiter will think you misspoke. Number 20. Ambrosia. They called it the food of the gods, and on a hot Sunday afternoon, it nearly was. Ambrosia was the simplest thing in the world. Fresh orange segments, crushed pineapple, and a heavy snow of shredded coconut, sometimes bound with a little of the juice, sometimes with a spoonful of sour cream. The fancy version added maraschino cherries, chopped pecans, and those tiny marshmallows that started showing up in the 50s. It sat in a big glass bowl, cold and sweet and bright, somewhere between a salad and a dessert, and nobody could quite decide which. Oranges cost about a nickel each, a can of pineapple around 20 cents. It went to Easter, to homecoming, to every dinner where the weather was warm and something refreshing was needed. Children fished out the cherries first. The marshmallows melted slightly into the fruit and turned the whole bowl silky. Today it survives mostly at old-fashioned Thanksgivings, and the young people at the table push it aside without knowing what they are missing. Number 19. Ham salad sandwiches. When the Easter ham was picked down to scraps, nothing got thrown away in a church family. The leftover ham went through the hand crank meat grinder, came out in soft pink ribbons, and got mixed with sweet pickle relish, mayonnaise, a little mustard, and a spoon of the pickle juice. Spread on white bread, it made a sandwich that was salty, sweet, and rich all at once, and it stretched the last dollar of a holiday ham into a whole church picnic. The ham was already paid for. The relish cost a dime. That old grinder clamped to the edge of the kitchen table, and the sound of it turning meant leftovers were becoming something new. Churchwomen packed these in wax paper and stacked them in shoe boxes for the drive to the picnic grounds. The relish kept the meat moist through the hottest afternoon. We buy sliced deli ham now and never taste what that grinder made. First pattern break. Here is the thing about a 1950s church picnic that no modern potluck can touch. There was no sign-up sheet. There was no text message coordinating who brought what. There was a shared understanding, passed from mother to daughter across generations, that everyone brought the dish they were known for, and somehow it always balanced out. Mrs. Henderson brought the deviled eggs because that was her dish, and it would have been unthinkable for anyone else to bring them. The whole system ran on covered dishes, spiral-bound church cookbooks, sold to raise money for a new roof, and a kind of quiet competition that nobody would ever admit to. Your worth in that community was measured, in part, by whether people reached for your bowl first. When the Women's Missionary Society published its cookbook, getting your recipe printed with your name under it was a small immortality. Those cookbooks are the only reason we remember any of this at all. Number 18. Coca-Cola salad. It sounds like a dare, but it was a beloved dish, and it was pure 1950s ingenuity. cherry jello dissolved in hot water, then a bottle of Coca-Cola poured in, which fizzed and foamed before settling. Into that went canned dark cherries, crushed pineapple, and chopped pecans, and the whole thing set up dark and glossy and studded with fruit. The cola gave it a spiced, almost cinnamon depth you could not get any other way, and a bottle of Coke cost a nickel from the machine. Some women swore by adding a block of cream cheese for a marbled layer. It went to church suppers across the South, sitting proudly among the other congealed salads, dark as garnet against the pale greens and pinks. Children could not believe they were being allowed to eat soda pop at the table. Today, the very idea makes people laugh, but one bite would change their minds. It has slipped almost entirely out of the American memory. Number 17, 3-bean salad. Cold, tangy, and endlessly practical, 3-bean salad was the workhorse of the covered dish supper. Canned green beans, wax beans, and kidney beans, drained and tossed with sliced onion and green pepper, then bathed in a dressing of oil, vinegar, and sugar, and left to marinate overnight, so every bean drank up the flavor. It cost almost nothing, 3 cans at maybe 15 cents each, and it fed a crowd. The genius was that it needed no refrigeration to survive an afternoon on a hot table. The vinegar kept it safe and only made it better as the hours passed. Church women loved it because they could make it the night before and forget about it, which mattered on a Sunday morning already crowded with getting 6 children into their good clothes. The colors, green and gold and deep red, looked like effort. It was the opposite of effort. It has faded now into the occasional deli case, stripped of the story. Number 16, 7-layer salad. This was the show-off dish, built in a clear glass bowl so everyone could admire the stripes. A layer of shredded lettuce, then celery, then peas, then diced onion and green pepper, sealed under a thick blanket of mayonnaise, spread edge to edge like frosting. On top went grated cheddar and a shower of crumbled bacon. The trick was the mayonnaise seal, which kept everything crisp underneath for a full day, so a woman could build it Saturday night and carry it to church Sunday without a worry. A head of lettuce cost about a dime, a bag of frozen peas a quarter. You did not toss it until you served it, and then every scoop pulled up all 7 layers at once. It looked like something from a country club, and it was made entirely of pantry staples. Church potlucks lived on it for decades. It survives at a few family reunions now, half remembered. The layers no longer counted. Number 15, church-baked beans. Not the beans from the can, warmed and dumped in a bowl. These were doctored, baked, and unmistakable. Canned pork and beans poured into a deep dish, then loaded with brown sugar, molasses, yellow mustard, chopped onion, and strips of bacon laid across the top, baked low and slow for 2 hours until the sauce turned thick and dark and the edges caramelized against the dish. Every church had a woman whose beans were legendary, and hers were always empty first. A few cans of beans cost under 50 cents, and the additions were pennies from the pantry. The smell of them baking on Saturday afternoon meant Sunday was coming. They traveled to the picnic still warm in the same dish, wrapped in newspaper and a towel to hold the heat. Sweet, smoky, and sticky, they were the perfect partner to a plate of fried chicken. We open a can and microwave it now, and something has been lost that 2 hours in the oven used to give. Number 14, green bean casserole. Here is the one that changed American church tables forever, and it was invented in a corporate test kitchen. In 1955, a home economist at the Campbell Soup Company combined a can of cream of mushroom soup, green beans, milk, and a topping of crispy fried onions, and called it a day. Within a year, it was on every potluck table in the country. Your grandmother poured it into a baking dish, sprinkled those onions over the top, and baked it until it bubbled, and the onions turned golden and crisp. A can of soup cost about 10 cents, the beans and onions a little more, and it fed a crowd for next to nothing. It was creamy, salty, and comforting, and children who hated vegetables ate green beans without a fight because of it. It became so common that people forgot it was ever new. It is one of the only dishes on this list you can still find, but almost nobody remembers it was born in 1955 to sell more soup. Second pattern break. Now, here is what most people do not understand about all these jiggling, molded, congealed salads. They were not just food, they were a status symbol you could eat. Making a gelatin salad required a refrigerator, and in the early 1950s, a refrigerator was still a major purchase, around $200, a real investment for a working family. When your mother carried a shimmering, perfectly unmolded ring salad into the fellowship hall, she was quietly announcing that her family had a Frigidaire humming in the kitchen. The gelatin companies knew exactly what they were doing. They flooded women's magazines and church cookbooks with hundreds of recipes, turning a cheap box of powder into the centerpiece of American entertaining. The more elaborate the mold, the more suspended fruit and vegetables it held perfectly in place, the more it said about the woman who made it. We look at those wobbling salads now and see something strange. Back then, people saw sophistication, modernity, and just a little bit of showing off. Number 13. Jell-O ribbon salad. This was the queen of the congealed salads, and building it took patience most people no longer have. Layer by layer, one color of gelatin poured and set firm in the icebox before the next was added, sometimes with a creamy middle layer of gelatin whipped with cream cheese or evaporated milk. Red, then white, then green, each stripe crisp against the next, standing tall when sliced. It might take a full day to make because every layer had to set completely, or the colors bled and the whole effort was ruined. A few boxes of Jell-O cost under $0.25. The woman who brought a perfect ribbon salad to the Christmas-covered dish supper had earned every compliment she got because everyone knew what it took. It cut into glowing stained glass slices the children stared at before they ate. It was as much decoration as dessert. Almost nobody has the patience to make it now, and so it has quietly disappeared. Number 12. Cheese ball. Before the meal even started, there was the cheese ball, rolled in nuts and set out with a box of crackers to keep the crowd busy. Softened cream cheese mashed together with shredded sharp cheddar, grated onion, a shake of Worcestershire, and sometimes a little crushed pineapple or chopped olive, then shaped by hand into a ball and rolled in chopped pecans until it was completely coated. It sat on a plate surrounded by Ritz crackers, and hands reached for it all afternoon. A block of cream cheese cost about $0.25. It was rich and sharp and salty, and the pecans gave it a crunch that made it feel fancy. Church women competed on their cheese balls the way they competed on everything, adding a secret ingredient they would only hint at. It kept beautifully and could be made days ahead, which made it a favorite. It hung on into the 1980s and then slowly faded, replaced by store-bought dips that ask nothing of anyone. Number 11. Macaroni salad. Cold, creamy, and made in a bowl big enough to bathe a baby in, macaroni salad stretched a nickel box of pasta into a dish that fed 30. Elbow macaroni boiled and cooled, then folded together with mayonnaise, chopped celery, diced onion, sweet pickle relish, and often chopped hard-boiled egg, seasoned with salt, pepper, and a little mustard for tang. Some women added shredded carrot for color, or a can of tuna to make it a meal. A box of macaroni cost about 9 cents. It was filling, familiar, and it disappeared by the bowlful, especially among the children. It survived the picnic heat far better than it had any right to, kept cool in the shade under a wet towel. Every family had its own version, and everyone was convinced theirs was the correct one. The relish and the egg were the marks of a real church macaroni salad, not the plain stuff. We buy it by the pound now and never quite get it right. Number 10. Potato salad. If fried chicken was the king of the church picnic, potato salad was the queen, and no two were ever alike. Boiled potatoes diced while still warm so they drank up the dressing, then folded with mayonnaise, yellow mustard, chopped celery, onion, sweet pickle relish, and hard-boiled egg, dusted with paprika across the top for color. A 5-pound bag of potatoes cost about a quarter, and it fed a small army. The great debate, mustard or no mustard, sweet pickle or dill, divided congregations quietly for decades. Your grandmother made hers exactly one way, and would have been mortally offended if you suggested a change. It sat in the center of the table in a bowl passed down through the family, and running out of it was a small tragedy. The paprika on top was not for flavor, it was for pride. Store versions today are pale imitations, missing the warm potatoes, the fresh egg, and the hand that made it just so. Number 9. Divinity. On the dessert end of the table, gleaming white and cloud-light, sat Divinity, a candy so temperamental that women refused to make it on a humid day. Sugar, corn syrup, and water boiled to exactly the right temperature, then beaten into stiffly whipped egg whites and mixed until it lost its shine and held its shape, dropped in soft peaks onto wax paper, each one crowned with a pecan half. Get it wrong by a few degrees, and it turned to sticky soup or hard rock. Get it right, and it melted on the tongue like sweet air. Sugar was cheap, but the skill was not, and the woman who could make perfect divinity was quietly revered. It appeared at Christmas and homecoming, arranged on a good plate like little snowballs. The humidity rule was iron. Divinity and rain did not mix. It is nearly gone now, too fussy for a world that buys its candy in bags. The ones who could make it are mostly gone too, and the knowledge with them. Third pattern break. Here is something worth saying out loud. The dessert table at a 1950s church picnic was not an afterthought. It was the main event, set apart on its own long table, and it held the entire reputation of half the women in the congregation. A young wife standing in that community could rise or fall on whether her pound cake came out right. These were women who often could not vote on the church budget, could not preach, could not sit on the deacon board, but they ruled the covered dish supper absolutely, and that dessert table was their domain. A blue ribbon at the county fair meant something, but a whispered "Did you try Ruth's chess pie?" meant more, because it came from your own people. The recipes were currency, traded and guarded and sometimes deliberately altered before being handed to a rival, so hers would never turn out quite as good. Every one of these desserts carries that hidden history of pride, competition, and the only power some of those women were allowed to hold. Number 8. Banana pudding. No church dessert table in the South was complete without it. Layered in a big glass dish so the strata showed through the sides. A cooked custard, thick and golden, layered with sliced ripe bananas and Nilla wafers, the wafers softening into cake as they sat, sometimes crowned with a browned meringue, sometimes with whipped cream. Made from scratch, the pudding was stirred over low heat until it coated a spoon, never rushed, never lumpy. A box of wafers cost about 20 cents, bananas a dime a bunch. By the time it reached the picnic, the wafers had melted into the custard and the whole thing had turned into something between a pudding and a cake, and that transformation was the entire point. Every family swore its recipe was the real one. Children ate around the bananas or dug for them, depending. It is one of the few survivors on this list, but the from-scratch cooked custard version, the one that mattered, has mostly given way to instant pudding and a shortcut. Number 7. Chess pie. Ask 3 Southern grandmothers what makes a chess pie, and you will get 3 answers and possibly an argument. At its heart, it was the simplest pie imaginable, made from what was always on hand: butter, sugar, eggs, and a spoonful of cornmeal to give it body, poured into a crust and baked until it's set with a crackly golden top and a sweet, gooey center. The name, some said, came from just pie, which is what a woman answered when asked what kind it was. It cost almost nothing, using only pantry staples, which is exactly why it was born in hard times and never left. It was rich enough that a thin slice was plenty, sweet enough to make your teeth ache in the best way. Every church had feuds, gentle ones, over whose was best. Lemon chess, chocolate chess, plain chess, each had its champions. It has faded far outside the South, and even there the young people rarely learn it. It deserves so much better. Number 6. Buttermilk pie. Cousin to the chess pie, and just as forgotten, buttermilk pie turned a cup of leftover buttermilk into something that tasted like custard from heaven. Sugar, eggs, butter, flour, and buttermilk whisked together and poured into a crust, baked until the top turned golden and the center set into a tangy, silky sweetness unlike anything else. The buttermilk, a byproduct nobody wanted to waste, gave it a gentle sourness that kept the whole thing from being cloying. A quart of buttermilk cost about 20 cents, and the rest came from the pantry. It was the pie a frugal woman made when she had buttermilk left over from churning or biscuits and refused to pour it down the drain. It cut into clean, creamy wedges and sat modestly among the flashier desserts, winning people over one bite at a time. Waste not thinking made it, and our waste-everything world forgot it. Find a slice today, and you will wonder why anyone ever stopped. Number 5. Pound cake. The most honest cake in America, named for its recipe: a pound of butter, a pound of sugar, a pound of eggs, a pound of flour. No frosting, no fuss, just a dense, buttery, golden loaf with a crackled top baked in a tube pan and turned out plain. The skill was all in the making, creaming the butter and sugar until it was light, adding the eggs one at a time, never rushing, or the cake fell. A good pound cake meant a patient baker and a steady oven, and the woman who mastered it was set for life at any covered dish supper. It cost more than the cheaper desserts. All that butter and all those eggs, which made it a mark of care. It traveled perfectly, needed no refrigeration, and sliced clean for 100 people. Served plain or with sugared strawberries and a spoon of cream in summer, it was perfection. The from-scratch pound cake is rare now, elbowed out by boxes and mixes that will never taste the same. Number 4. Hand-cranked ice cream. 4th pattern break. Here is the part the modern picnic has lost completely. So much of this food was made by hand, together, as part of the day itself, not prepared in advance and merely carried in. The ice cream was cranked on the church steps by whichever men and boys were roped into taking turns. The lemonade was squeezed into a wash tub. The watermelons were hauled up from the creek where they had been cooling all morning in the cold water. The picnic was not a place you brought finished food to eat. It was a place where food was still being finished, where the last hour of cooking happened in the open air, with everyone watching and helping and waiting. That shared labor, the sweat and the turning and the anticipation, was half the joy of the whole thing. We buy our ice cream in tubs now, and our lemonade in jugs, and we have quietly traded away the part that made it a community instead of a crowd. Nothing said church picnic in July like the sound of a hand-crank ice cream freezer grinding away in the shade. A metal canister of sweet custard, cream, sugar, eggs, and vanilla packed in a wooden bucket surrounded by ice and rock salt Turn by hand until your arm gave out and the next man took over. It could take 45 minutes of hard cranking, the handle growing stiffer as the cream froze, until finally it would barely turn, and everyone knew it was ready. The salt cost pennies, the ice was hauled from town, and the cream came from someone's cow. The reward for the boy who cranked longest was the first taste, licked straight off the dasher when it was pulled from the canister. It came out softer and richer than anything from a store, tasting of real vanilla and real cream. Peach in season was heaven. The electric machines and the grocery store tubs killed it. And with it went one of the great communal joys of an American summer. Number 3, watermelon. It seems almost too simple to name, but a 1950s church picnic without watermelon was no picnic at all, and the way it was served has been forgotten. The melons were bought by the wagon load or grown in the church garden, then sunk in the creek or a wash tub of ice water for hours to chill down hard in the summer heat. When it was time, a man split them open on a plank table with a long knife, the crack and the smell drawing every child on the grounds. Slices were handed out dripping, and everyone ate them leaning forward over the grass, so the juice ran off their elbows instead of their Sunday clothes. Seed-spitting contests broke out among the boys. A whole melon cost about 50 cents. The rinds were saved, never thrown away, for pickling later in the week. It was cold, sweet, absurdly abundant, and completely free of ceremony, and it tied every generation together at one long table on a hot afternoon. Number 2, deviled eggs. They were the first thing gone from every table, every time, without exception. Hard-boiled eggs sliced in half, the yolks scooped out and mashed with mayonnaise, yellow mustard, sweet pickle relish, salt and pepper, then piped or spooned back into the whites and dusted with paprika. Simple, cheap, endlessly satisfying. A dozen eggs cost about 60 cents, and everything else came from the pantry. But the mark of a serious churchwoman was the deviled egg plate, a special dish with little oval indentations made for nothing else, brought out only for occasions like this. She filled every slot, covered it, and guarded it on the drive to the grounds like precious cargo. There was always one woman famous for hers, and it would have been a breach of order for anyone else to bring them. They vanished so fast that latecomers learned to make a beeline for the egg plate first. Now they show up at holidays if we are lucky, the special plate long since packed away in an attic. Number 1, fried chicken, the crown of the entire church picnic, cooked before dawn on a hot Sunday morning. Chicken soaked in buttermilk, dredged heavy in seasoned flour, and fried in a deep cast iron skillet until the crust turned shattering crisp and the meat stayed juicy. Your grandmother started before sunrise, standing over a spitting skillet while the house still slept because it had to cool just right to travel and eat cold. A frying chicken cost about $1 in the mid-50s and fed the whole family. Eaten cold under a shade tree, it beat anything a restaurant ever served. It was the dish that said a woman loved her people enough to rise in the dark. We pick it up in a bucket now, and we have forgotten what it meant to be handed a cold thigh by a grandmother who got up at 4 to make it. Here is my challenge. Make one of these this Sunday. Just one. Then tell me in the comments whether it tasted like something you had forgotten you knew, because these were never just dishes carried into a fellowship hall. They were how a whole community said grace, one covered dish at a time. Tell me which one you are going to make. I want to know if the fried chicken gets more love than the chess pie.